Welcome back to the Run Radio podcast. My name is Trina, and today the artist spotlight is shining on Chris Chiarino.
Close enough.
Chiarino. I said it to myself over and over this morning. I'm like, I've got it, because he says it sounds like Marino, but and then I get on here and I mess it up.
That's all right.
I am wearing my Sucia Rosa shirt in honor of your music, and you have been a long time fan of Run Radio, so it's great to see you doing so much more on stage stuff, and it just looks like you're kind of hitting your stride, and life seems good right now. So tell me about what all's going on.
Yeah, so I think hitting the stride is the key, right? Last year in August, I resigned from my position in ministry at Glendale Christian Church, and really wanted to focus more on music and on counseling. So I opened up a nonprofit here in Springfield, and that's been going really well. But it's afforded me some extra time in the evening. I was attending the Galloway Station open mic on Tuesday nights, and then through a series of events, myself and Jim Preble, who is the lead guitar player for Sucia Rosa, were asked to take over hosting duties. So every Tuesday night from 6:30 to 9:30, we host open mic. And so as a result of that, for about 14 months, I've been going and getting to just play every week. And it's a different animal when you get live than in the studio.
Yeah.
And a lot of my music up to that point had been me writing songs, recording, whether at my house, and then bringing it to the other studio or doing it in the other studio. And so it's really allowed me to kind of hone my performing skills and to get better at, just playing live. And then through that connection, we've had several shows there. We've even done a show at Pappy's Place. We've got one, it looks like, coming up in October 28th in Willard at the car show they're having there on Main Street. So we'd be outside on a gooseneck trailer. So it's kind of the goal right now, is to just really hone our skills. We've added people to the band. Before, it was kind of me and session players, and now we've got an actual stage band. This is the second or third attempt at getting something, but this one seems to be working. Get to play with my wife and my dad. My wife plays bass, my dad plays keys.
That's exciting. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So my wife has been playing bass in the worship band at church for several years. So when we restarted back up, I did have a different bass player from a band I was in, and he was having a lot of health issues and just wasn't in a place where he could do it. And so I recruited my wife because we had a couple shows coming up. And so she would like to come as a spectator because she's getting her doctorate and working full time, but it's something that we get to do together. So, and then my dad has graciously joined the band, which is a big commitment for him because he lives down in Mountain Home, Arkansas. And so it's a 2.5-hour drive to practice each way. But this new album I'm really excited about, and we've also got our drummer Jeff Roberts. So we've got a 5-piece band right now. What I'm excited about this new album is because we've got these other people, some of the songwriting duties and lead singing duties were spread out a little bit, which was, it's a step of courage, right? You've got a brand. We're on our 5th album, but my dad wrote/co-wrote, I think, 5 of the songs on the album, and he sings lead on 3 of them. Jim wrote and sings lead on 1 of them. So it's kind of there's a little bit more, obviously, variety in style and sound as a result of that. So we're looking forward to how that works out, in the future.
Absolutely. What do you were saying that, it's different, and it's different every night when you're on stage. What are some of the adjustments you've had to make kind of on the fly and just with performing in front of a live audience all of the time?
I think a lot of it is, there's a level of confidence required in your playing ability and in your voice. It's weird. Live is both easier and more difficult singing wise. easier in that you can make mistakes and nobody remembers. More difficult in is that you have to be able to get it right, mostly right the first time. We're in the studio, you know, oh, okay, well, I can sing that 100 times if I need to. And so there's that fine line of that, you know, those two different things, you know what I mean? And but it also changes the way you write a little bit. What I've noticed is the last 3 songs I've written, I've got 13 or 14 new songs post this last album that we're going to be working on for the next one. The next album will be called Endless Summer Nights. And I've noticed, like, the last 3 in particular, the pace is a little bit different. You're not writing ballad as much, singer-songwriter, ballad, or moderate pace songs. They're a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more easier to play live, right? Because when you get an audience in front of you, they'll endure a few moments of intimacy, but they really just want something that's going to get them going. You know what I mean? And so that's been a huge piece. And standing up playing, you know, most players don't stand around their house playing, right? So when you're playing guitar, like, we have to stand up, everything's in a different place.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like in the studio, you can layer 6 guitar parts. You know, when you're live with the band, at most we'll ever have is 3 guitars. You know, if my dad steps away from the keyboard. So it's like, how do you fill in those spaces that were being filled in by other riffs and things? And just realizing that there's 2 approaches. You can play the song live exactly like the album, which would require quite a bit of attention to detail and all that, or you can keep it dynamically like the album, but add a different flair to some of the accent instruments each time you play it.
When you're writing those songs and thinking about the audience more, has that changed the way, not just what you're writing, but has that changed your writing style?
No, not really. My style is, you know, I did hip hop for, gosh, you know, I recorded my first song in 1997. I did hip hop from 97 to secular, 97 to 2004, 2005 to 2019. I did Christian hip hop. So lyrically, you know, a lot of that time, you know, spent honing the ability to write. And in hip hop, there's something, you know, called freestyling. So a lot of what I did, especially for my early years, was we would go and we just put an instrumental album on for 60 minutes and just rap continuously. Yes. Kind of free association. So the way I write a lot of times is I find a guitar progression or a piano progression I like of chords, and then I'll just start singing, you know, and I'll record it, and you know, 80% of it could stick and become part of the song. There have been some songs lately where I've been a little bit more intentional. I don't think it has to do with performing live. It's just I knew what I wanted to say. You know, there's just certain circumstances where you get inspiration, like, hey, this song is an important one. And so, like, I wrote after I quit working at Glendale, the first single for this album was written fairly early, and it's called It's Over. So that one, I probably spent more time cultivating the lyrics on that song than probably any other song that I've written, because I want to be really deliberate with the direction of the way the song flowed. You know, it's kind of a call and answer song in the sense that the verse is like, what do you do when they tell you it's over? You worked so hard, but it's come to an end. You made your plans thinking it was forever. Now forever is never again. Right? So that's the first verse. So the idea is, okay, well, that's kind of sad, right? The choruses, though, are meant to be the answer. It's all right, just look up at the sky. You'll find the world still spinning around. Life can change. In the blink of an eye, you're wondering, what are you going to do now? So there's like oh, you're dealing with this, you're wrestling with these thoughts, but here's what you do. Life is, you know, and so I was very deliberate. So asking what questions is kind of like what, how, and where. Those are the 3 questions in the verses. you know. And so I liked that idea. So I was more deliberate. So some songs there, and I think that, the more you write, the more, I was listening yesterday to this thing called Break Shot, the first 21 years. It's a little words and music thing that Audible does for a bunch of different artists, but this is the James Taylor one, and I was letting my mom and my dad actually listen to it on the way back from Chicago. And you start listening to some of the way he writes lyrics. It's much more poetic. Him and Jackson Browne, which two of my favorite artists. And so those are like challenging things because it's like they're being both concise and poetic, where I'm very concise. I'm a word guy. So like as being a therapist, being a rapper, it's like even in my writing, in the book I wrote, I would say it lacks some creativity in the sense of like it's pretty straightforward. Not that it makes it a bad story, but it's not like I'm getting into a lot of broad description or things like that. So in music, he'll say a song like "The sun shines on this funeral, the same as all the earth, or the same as it shines everywhere upon this whole earth," kind of idea. And you're like, oh, that's very majestic and poetic. You're saying basically, yeah, it was another day like any other day, and there's people that are having good things and bad things happen, but you're saying it in a way that sounds really artistic, I guess, in my head.
I know you're also a Beatles guy. Have you seen the documentary where Paul McCartney and Rick Ross are going through have you made it all the way through?
Yeah.
I'm not all the way through yet, but I'm enjoying it a lot. And I love how he talks about just how they'll take a song that just started off one direction and it completely turns around, or they'll talk about such simple chords that they just went all through. And it's just the layering, it's just magnificent and brilliant. Just the incredible longevity and so many masterpieces that Paul and the Beatles have managed to put together.
I mean, if the landscape of music wouldn't be what it was, obviously.
No.
And those are the kind of things, like this year as I've invested more into the music, because I have my own label, so I've got a few other artists, but really working with my band. But I spend a lot of time, reading or listening to Audible, really, more than reading, but I do read some stuff, and then watching documentary. We've done a lot more concert going this year. I got to see Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, which was phenomenal. Got to see Jackson Browne when he came to Springfield. Went and saw Ed Sheeran at Arrowhead. We're going next weekend to see Coldplay in Vancouver.
That's exciting.
But a lot of that is like I'm that guy that's sitting there like enjoying it, but also like they're not doing anything I couldn't do. You know what I mean?
Homework. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm there studying it like, okay, if I'm on a stage like that, like Jackson Browne came to Juanita K, so 5,000-6,000 people, maybe less, it's more intimate. But you love the juxtaposition because Bruce is running around like a wild man at 75. I mean, I don't understand the kind of shape he's in. It was incredible for 3 straight hours, right? But Jackson doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He can stand behind a microphone, play the guitar, or sit behind the piano. And it's so cool to see that there's not just one way to be compelling, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, Ed Sheeran's kind of in the middle, right? Because he played, what's cool about him is, with the exception of a few of the songs that were off his collaboration albums, he's playing everything, right? With a looper. Yeah. He's playing the drums, he's playing all the parts, and which is a totally different thing in and of itself. So you look at like, there's so much room for variety and individualism here. And it's like, I think it all comes down to, with all 3 artists, a good song.
Yeah.
In songs that matter and are meaningful to people and that have something to say that resonate. And so, I feel like for me, my strength has always been as the writer, I've gotten a lot better at playing and singing over the years, and so then you can put more into it. Simple things like when you are not sure you're always going to be in pitch, it's hard to emote while singing. because you're focused so much on staying in pitch, right? But once you've got that down and you've figured out your instrument, your voice, then you can start really like connecting with the lyric more. And the same thing with playing, you can do more when you're more comfortable with what you're doing. And so those guys, that's the thing. It's practice, practice, practice. So we're out trying to gig more, practice more. But my goal is, I feel like this is the season because, my youngest is 10. 5 years from now, she'll be 15. The other ones will be pretty much out of the house. And so you're not neglecting time with them. Then I'll still be, in 5 years, I'll be 47. So I'm still going to be fairly young in terms of, energy. So where some people did it when they were young, my goal is to kind of, work into over the next 5 to 8 years into being able to do a little bit bigger shows and broader touring and just push our music. We're one of the few, well, not few that are probably here, but the few that I know in town that really gig solely based off our music. We do a 3-hour show and we do 4 or 5 cover songs. Where most bands in Springfield are doing cover music. Now there's a lot of singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
But from a band standpoint, we're gonna, go out and do us. We've got something to say, just like all the rest of the people that have come before us. Those cover songs were original songs.
Now that you've been doing more live shows, have you been seeing people show up and know your songs now and sing along and get into it more and know you at a different place?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's been cool. It's slow. We understand that, without a lot of marketing money and a lot of big studio push, it's kind of a grassroots organic movement. But in, the 6 or 7 shows over the last few months, you see slowly you add 1 or 2 people that have been to the show before, right? And it's like, it's nice when you see that because, they're familiar with the songs. Open mic people, that's one of the rewards of doing that because, you're there every week and a lot of the artists are there. So one of the songs I've written for the next album is called Ugly Sweater. And it's like to me, it's a song about codependency in a way, but also about like ending this relationship. And it's kind of like the first line is something this guy says in each verse, and then the other 3 lines are something the girl says in response to that. And but the idea of ugly sweater is, put us away like an ugly sweater. Just remember that seasons change, so put us away like an ugly sweater. But that one's been really popular, and it's one like an open mic, you're like, hey, do that song, or and like one person in particular really likes. She's like, I'm gonna make you guys an ugly sweater to sell as merch.
That would be awesome.
So, it's like when songs get into people's, head. Of course, that's at least my dream. Like the 2 things I'd like to get out of music would be to get paid to do it for a living. I don't even care about being famous, but it'd be nice to make enough money to do that. But also to be able to be in a situation like what you appreciate about these big bands is like, I didn't have to sing in a stadium of 60,000 people and every word's being sung to my song,
Yeah.
And that means that it touched those people. They wouldn't be singing if it didn't mean something. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, that connection with your storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited to see. I love that you keep coming back. Come back again. I know it's very important to you, your counseling, and that you started this nonprofit. Do you want to share a little bit about that too? Sure.
Yeah. So we've got our nonprofit is called Pursuing Peace, Mental Health and Wellness. And we're on 219 West Commercial Street, Suite 104. So we're on the historic Commercial Street. So when I quit working at Glendale, I didn't know exactly what I was going to pursue. And I was driving home one day and I went and worked with a friend that day. We were just doing some work on a deck that he was building. He's a contractor. And he said, and I was just talking to him, what do you think I should do? He's a, small business owner. What do you think? He's like, well, man, I mean, your bread and butter is, counseling, and I said, yeah, that's true. And as I was driving home that day, I was driving north on 65 and I was about to turn left on the Bluegrass Road. And it's never happened before or since, but I got this kind of just impression. I saw this vision in my head of like an office space. And I just felt like this idea, this is going to be your office, right? Which is really, an odd thing, but I remember it kind of putting a smile on my face, and because it was tough, it was a tough transition to walk away from ministry. It was, and it took, I mean, I'm just now really starting to feel good again. You know what I mean? It's been a long, like myself, and so I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I felt like it was God just letting me know. And so the next day I started looking at commercial property, and this was the third one I saw. And it went before we had them put infill in it. It looked exactly like what I saw in my head.
Oh, wow.
And so, and we wanted to kind of be in a downtown street, wanted to be kind of hip, we kind of want to destigmatize therapy, mental health, like I always tell people there's a difference between therapy and counseling, and we do both, but everybody needs counseling. Therapy, I look at therapy being like something you do when it's truly mental health related. You're in an anxiety crisis or depression or, anything like that. But everybody needs somebody to talk to. Everybody could use counsel or advice or can use being challenged on how they're looking at something or different ways to approach a situation. And so part of our goal is to be like, you don't have to be crazy to want to be in counseling. And then, we have a heart for the community, and I've been licensed for 15 years. So I could have been the guy that went and charged $200 a session and did 2 or 3 sessions a day and made my living. But we wanted to be able to provide an atmosphere where anybody could get the help they needed, regardless of what they could afford. So that's why we chose to go nonprofit. And, 2 of our people that we really want to support is the foster community, which we finally are in network with Home State Health, which is a big win for that because they have the sole contract for all foster kids. And then also clergy, offering free therapy to clergy, because having done full-time ministry for almost 10 years, you can't really get that support with in-house. So being able to offer that so less people burn out and walk away from their calling, and just be there to help them, and having that unique experience of having done that. And on the board, 3 of the 4 directors, we all worked for Children's Division for several years. So we have that unique aspect as well to our experience. So, but yeah, we've been here for at this spot for almost a year. The company's been in existence for just over a year. September 2nd was our 1-year anniversary. We've got one of the other directors is coming on, basically full-time, is transitioning over, getting clients. But we've just been able to really be blessed by the community and being able to support people. And we're always looking for more people to partner financially. It's been tough because, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean people are donating. Right. So, but I'm charging prices. Like, for instance, I don't know the exact stats because they're on my Facebook that I did the workup, but it's something close to, $35,000-$40,000 last year in free and reduced rates worth of sessions in a year. My reduced rate for clients that need it is a $50 45-minute session.
Yeah.
And I would bet, based on my research and talking to people, the standard rate for that's about between $100 and $125 for a 45-minute session in Springfield. So getting it at half or less than half the price out of pocket And like I said, some people, if they can't afford it, we just have, if we have the availability, we definitely sing for free. So there's just that long-term hope of collaborating more with people, coming alongside churches and getting their support as a local mission agency for that side, and also just people in our community that believe in the value of mental health and the priority that it is in this day and age when it seems like everybody's struggling with something. And so, our prayer and our hope is that, there are people right now in 3, 4, or 5 week waiting lists trying to get into places. And, we have immediate availability for them. So just connect dots.
That's great. Yeah, you're right. It shouldn't be something for the privileged few. It's something we all need access to and should be able to, have it within reach. So I'm glad you're doing that. I appreciate you're doing that. Tell people where they can go to connect with you, connect with your business, connect with your music.
Okay, yeah. So you can connect with the business. Just go to pursuingpeaceinc.org and you can find anything you need to know there. The music, the easiest thing would be to go to our LinkedIn, or Linktree, which is just Linktree/Sucia Rosa. That'll take you to our latest release, our Spotify, our Apple Music, our Facebook and Instagram pages. And so, that's probably the easiest way to get hold of us. I'm sure that if you reach out to Trina, she can point you in the right direction as well.
I can most certainly do that. Thank you, Chris Chiarino, for coming back to Run Radio, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
You take care. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Day. Bye.